Your PC is watching you right now, not a hacker, not a virus sitting in some shady download you clicked by accident, not some script a kid ran in a coffee shop while you were on public Wi-Fi. The thing watching you is Windows itself, the operating system you paid for, the software Microsoft shipped on your brand new laptop, the program that boots up when you press the power button every single morning. And the part that should genuinely stop you in your tracks is this. You probably already turned it off. You went into settings, you found the option, you clicked disable, you thought you were done. But there are millions of people right now who went through that exact same process and still have a version of this thing sitting in the background of their machine, waiting. This is the story of Windows Recall. And once you understand what it actually does, what it actually did when it first launched, and what it is still doing, even after all the fixes and the apologies and the rebuilds, you are going to look at your computer in a completely different way. So let us start from the very beginning, because to understand why this matters so much right now, you need to understand what happened in the months that led here. In May 2024, Microsoft held its annual Build Conference. This is their big developer event, the one where they announce major things coming to Windows. And that year, they had something they were genuinely excited about. They called it Recall, and they described it as a photographic memory for your PC. The idea was that your computer would take a screenshot of your screen every few seconds, essentially every time you switched apps or opened something new, and it would store all of those screenshots locally on your device. Then, a small AI model running directly on your machine would analyze every single one of those screenshots, read the text in them, understand what was in each image, and make all of that searchable. So you could open Recall weeks later and type something like that blue chart I saw in the PDF last Tuesday, and it would find it. Or you could ask it where you read something, and it would pull up the exact screenshot from the exact moment you were looking at it. Microsoft called it a productivity revolution. They said it would change the way people use computers forever. The reaction from the rest of the world was immediate, and it was not what Microsoft expected. Security researchers, privacy experts, journalists, and everyday users all said the same basic thing at the same time. They said this sounds exactly like a keylogger. For anyone who does not know that term, a keylogger is a type of malware. It is a malicious program that secretly records everything you type and everything you see on your screen and sends that information back to whoever installed it without you knowing. Companies have been getting people arrested for installing keyloggers on computers for decades. Security software actively hunts for keyloggers and destroys them. And here was Microsoft, one of the largest technology companies on the planet, building a keylogger directly into Windows and calling it a feature. But okay, you could argue that a keylogger is about intent. Recall was not sending your screenshots to Microsoft. It was storing them locally on your own device. Microsoft made a point of emphasizing that. Everything stays on your machine, they said. It never goes to our servers. So maybe the comparison to malware was unfair. Maybe it really was just a tool to help you find things you had already seen. That was the argument Microsoft made. And then a security researcher named Kevin Beaumont went and actually looked at how the thing worked under the hood. And what he found destroyed that argument completely. Kevin Beaumont is not just some random person online with an opinion about tech privacy. He is a former Microsoft threat analyst. He spent years working inside Microsoft specifically on security. He knows how these systems are built. He knows what to look for. And when he looked at Recall, what he found was that the database storing all of those screenshots, every single thing you had ever looked at on your computer, was stored in plain text, completely unencrypted, just sitting there on your hard drive like an open notebook anyone could read. And it got worse. The database was accessible to any user on the system, not just administrators, any user. Even a standard account with no special permissions could open that database and read its contents. Beaumont said, and this is a direct quote, he said, "I'm not being hyperbolic when I say this is the dumbest cybersecurity move in a decade." That is someone who used to work at Microsoft saying that about a Microsoft product. He also wrote that stealing everything you have ever typed or viewed on your own Windows PC was now possible with 2 lines of code. 2 lines. Not a sophisticated attack, not nation-state level hacking, 2 lines of code. Think about what is in that database. Think about a normal day on your computer. You checked your bank account, screenshot. You logged into your email, screenshot. You opened a document with your social security number or your passport details, screenshot. You had a private conversation with someone you trust, screenshot. You typed a password that your browser autofilled, screenshot. You looked at medical records, screenshot. You opened something you would never want anyone else to see, screenshot. All of it sitting in a plain text SQLite database that any piece of malware on your machine or anyone who sat down at your computer while you were in another room could just read like a book. Beaumont did not just describe this vulnerability, he proved it. He took an off-the-shelf info stealer, which is a type of malware that is sold on criminal forums and used to steal saved passwords and personal data from infected computers. and he ran it against a machine with Recall installed. The InfoStealer grabbed the entire Recall database and exfiltrated it before Microsoft Defender, which is Windows' own built-in antivirus, even had time to react. The most sensitive archive of personal data ever created about you, gone before your own computer's security software could stop it. Security experts from across the industry piled on. The president of Signal, a messaging app built specifically for people who care about privacy, said Recall was a dangerous honeypot for hackers. Barry Briggs, an analyst and former chief technology officer at Microsoft's own IT division, said it was highly likely that, and again, this is a direct quote, well-funded and well-trained foreign actors would soon try to break into the system to steal confidential information. He was talking about governments, China, Russia, North Korea, state-level hackers, professional teams whose entire job is to find ways into systems like this and take what they find back home. Briggs was saying that Recall would give those people an easy target. Not a vulnerability they had to discover and exploit, just a database, just sitting there. A security journalist named Patrick Gray made an observation that stuck with a lot of people. He pointed out that when sophisticated hackers break into a company or a government network, one of the first things they do is try to understand how the people who work there do their jobs. They do screen recordings. They watch what people click on. They figure out the internal workflows so they know exactly how to move money, steal data, or cover their tracks without triggering alarms. He said Recall could dramatically speed up that process. Instead of doing the surveillance themselves, attackers would just read the ready-made surveillance Recall had already done for them. Microsoft's response to all of this initially was defensive. They said the data was encrypted. Beaumont and others immediately pointed out that, yes, it was technically encrypted at rest, meaning when your computer was locked and off. But the moment you logged into Windows, the database decrypted itself, and from that point on, it was completely accessible to any program running on your machine. The encryption Microsoft was talking about only protected you from someone pulling your hard drive out and taking it to a different machine. The moment you were actually using your computer, which is the entire point, the protection did nothing. Any malware that was already on your system, any app you had ever installed, any extension in your browser, could reach into that database and pull everything out. Within days of Beaumont's research going public, Microsoft did something that told you everything you needed to know about how seriously they took the backlash. They pulled Recall. A feature they had announced with genuine excitement at their biggest developer conference of the year, a feature they had described as a revolution in personal computing, was gone. Not delayed, not tweaked, pulled. Microsoft said they needed more time to work on it. They did not use the word mistake. They did not admit that Kevin Beaumont was right, but they also did not ship it. Now this is where the ghost story starts, because pulling the announcement was not the same as pulling the software. In late 2024, Microsoft rolled out a major Windows 11 update. It was called the 24.8.2 update, and it was a significant upgrade to the operating system. And when people started installing it and poking around, they started noticing something. Recall-related files were on their machines. Processes connected to Recall were showing up in Task Manager, services tied.